a lot of construction to be done in the assembly. It's not the easy, not just the, it's not just the IKEA furniture at the end assembly. It's major construction work. But I still think a lot of the systems will be built in Germany and sent to India and assembled in India. And playing back and forth and then maybe getting a missile system from Russia or whatever, that would all have to stop. But also the idea of that, I think India sees of itself as one day being a great power. Sorry, it's an important country, but it is not a great power. Yeah, I know they have nukes, but it's a big country and it's important, but it is not a great power. That's my evaluation. You're going to have to adopt NATO foreign policy on just about everything. And in essence, I mean, this is become a client state of America, because all of NATO, to one degree or another, the French left NATO for a while under de Gaulle. They came back. But to one degree or another, modern day France, modern day Germany are still a client state of the United States, if you want to call it. Or puppet would be overstating it. Some cases they are puppets to some degree. It depends on what country we're talking about. Now, it's a very loose oversight, very loose over control, but you're going to become, to some degree, an American client state if you join NATO. And I know that even the limited sharing or whatever that they were actually sort of talking about, a lot of it, India was concerned about American policy regarding Pakistan. I understand that because I did read some of the reports coming out. But even beyond that, I don't think. And so it's just not going to happen, Singh. It's just whether you wanted to have it happen to see your nation on board with it or not. I just knew it wasn't going to happen. It's just not the way. It's way it's set up, and I don't think the current political structure in India wants that either. And they're not going to like the level of 15 days is event you can show research bonus for land doctrine. Nice, but not as good as that. So we'll get to that. 28 days, another dockyard. That's good. We'll probably do that, but let's just take a look around. Like I say, I've not gotten this far before. I got to in my play test prior to starting the series, I got to the beginning of 38, but not into it. Civilian and military factory. Yeah, that's better and more important to do that first over the naval one. We'll get to the naval one. Okay. So let's continue building more armaments factories. And one up there. Just one, but still get production what you can. Okay, that's given us the Sudetenland, because what we did is got this quote-unquote state here, this state here. So two civilian factories, and this state over here with one civilian factory and 5 military factories. Very good. Well, this is where Tatra Trucks was/is located. I had trouble finding out too much information because I don't think modern Tatra Trucks wants me to know how much they colluded with Germany and or how much they were sort of Sudeten German. It may be because it's a company that still exists today. And so they try to minimize their World War II role in stuff as much as they can. Not that I blame them for their public image, but just knowing the historical facts. And don't blame anybody working there today for what someone did, 60, 70 years ago, but, whatever. Well, India trying to balance between the two. It's going to keep India down if you try to balance between the two, because so long as India is balancing with Russia, we will not share certain technologies with India. We as being the U.S., as well as we being the NATO countries. So certain technologies, we allow some very high-end American and some very high-end Dutch production equipment to go to Taiwan. I don't think we've ever let that very high-end stuff go to communist China, though. Some of that stuff. I'm not talking about the stuff made by the equipment, but very high-end computer manufacturing chips. There is, I'm forgetting the company. There is one major company that builds the machines that build the microchips in America, and then there's I believe a higher-end company. The highest end is in the Netherlands, who uses German mirrors and whatever that only produce in BICE in Germany. They get shipped over to the Netherlands that make these very high-end technological machines. We did let them go to Taiwan because Taiwan is, let's face it, an American puppet. I don't mean sort of a vague client state. Now, we don't care about how they, so long as, and even when they were under the strong nationalist government, meaning Chiang Kai-shek as a dictator, we were still sort of going, don't massacre your people too bad. Don't be too brutal of a dictator. We were literally telling them, things like that. I mean, you can be a dictator, because he was a dictator when Chiang Kai-shek was alive in Taiwan. Now they're a democracy. I do know that. And there's the Kuomintang or Kuomintang or the KMT. I'm sure I'm butchering it because I don't do Chinese well. Party still around to this day. And then there's the People's Party, which is more of an independence party from China. They're even though we got a division or more still, U.S. division or more, one or two divisions still stationed in Korea, and we again, because they've gone to various levels of authoritarian, they're still very much because they need us to protect them from North Korea. They have to function as our puppet because of that. And again, China will take over Taiwan. So they have to function as a puppet of the U.S. So we quietly, we don't tell them because we don't care where they build the roads or what their tax rate is or things like that. And they're not like having to send tribute to Rome or to Washington, D.C. or something like that. But so it's not a very heavy-handed, they don't have to send soldiers or send guest workers to America or some crap like the Nazis did. But South Korea, but definitely Taiwan. Japan is actually moving closer into American orbit again. That's very voluntary on their part, but and the Philippines is moving closer back to being an American puppet, and again voluntarily on their part, because they like being an American puppet much more than they fear being a Chinese puppet. So being an American puppet, when your choice is well, America will let you do your own thing, okay. China will go, oh, America's not there. You're going to do our thing. And there's been conflict over the South China Sea is where it's really strong. And the Philippines are learning, oh, shit. Yeah, being an American puppet has its... Hey, thanks for following over on Twitch. Thank you. Being an American puppet has its, difficulties maybe. We get bases, naval and air bases, and we're getting bases back in Philippines right now as I speak. They're reorganizing bases back again and going back to bases that we left many years ago when it was Aquino wanting to go away. Wanted us to go away. We went away. And so they're now going, American puppetry, has its costs. But China's becoming a problem. Because they were, strong enough to take care of themselves from Malaysia or Indonesia or something trying to interfere within their affairs. But now that China is becoming a problem, being an American puppet. I mean, they even, the American puppet there was, of course, the Marco. So you know what they've done? They've reelected his son. So Marco's son, the dictator's son, is now president of the Philippines. And he is and I've talked to some people in the region outside of the Philippines that watch this fairly closely, and they're going, no, you're sort of doing they're still pursuing Chinese. There's still Chinese construction projects going on in the Philippines, and there are. And no. And I'm going, yeah, they're moving over, and then, yeah, they've very much signaled moving over, and we're getting back our Navy base and whatnot in the Philippines. Might not be quite as blatant as it was under Marcos's father, but yeah, they're becoming our puppets again too. So yeah, we've got our puppets. So Taiwan, which is less corrupt, I'm not saying it's uncorrupt, but less corrupt than the Philippines and whatnot, that we let some very high level technology go and be produced there. And we let it happen in the sense that we don't destroy the equipment or keep it from happening there. I mean, they invest in it themselves and develop part of it, but the high level infrastructure of modern AI chip manufacturing, not just having the chips, but manufacturing it, I don't think we'll let it go to India. And I don't think India has the tech base to develop it entirely on their own. Not that they couldn't in a long time, but realistically, they'd have to buy it. I think they could run the machines, I'm sure. I'm not disparaging Indians, but there's a lot of intermediate steps to get there that even Taiwan doesn't have, again, because we're looking at very high-end Dutch and German and American manufacturing in the highest levels of technology on the planet that at least I know of. I know they're talking about, alien spaceships that America has, and they may. I don't know. I don't know the truth of that thing. But at least of the technology that I know, we're dealing with the highest end here. We're not going to let it go to some place like India without them being securely in our group of states. So long as India is playing both off them, we're not going to let it have certain things. We'll let it have basic stuff, but not the highest level of fighters and not the highest level of other things. The highest level, because German submarines are good, maybe very good, but they ain't the British and the Americans, which have higher level submarine capabilities that the Australians are getting. The Australians are now, the current is they're getting 2 used American Virginia class and 1 new build, so it'll be whatever batch, whatever the newest Virginias. And the British submarines that they were going to build, that they're developing right now, are going to be a little more American influenced because they're going to be building them. Australia is going to get some of those submarines that Britain's building, but for the Australians to pick the British models, they had to, and I don't know the details, and a lot of it's still classified, but they had to have certain American capabilities that the British did not have in their standard design. So my understanding is they're somewhat redesigning whatever, and I forget the model names, and it's sort of, still in the design phase. They're redesigning some of the British stuff to be a little bit more like American, not trying to mimic the, entirely the Virginia class. And again, the Virginia class has gone through multiple batches. I think they're on batch 5, but maybe it's 7. I don't know. And so there are different upgrades and different modular components that are made in different batches. But so the new British submarines are going to look to be, and they have some other stealthy stuff that the Virginias don't. So it's going to be a mix of what the British can do and what the Americans can do to be able to be the version that Australia picked, as opposed to just picking and doing entirely the American. Because that was my looking from the outside in and hearing some reports. My understanding was either they were going to go for the American design, or the British design had to be a bit more like American, and then they would go for the British one. And so that's my understanding of what they've done. So to get that high level, those are nuclear powered subs, where the German ones, I'm not sure whether the ones that India are getting are diesel electric or the air independent system. The ones, I'm not sure. And I don't know and they may have said, I just don't remember the details. So, and they're great. They're probably the best that are outside of the high-end Western nuclear submarines, but they're still just one step down from what we're using and building in the future Oh, social credit. Oh, from what I'm saying. Norway was part of the Danish kingdom, Viking Age. Yes, yes, you're right. But Beamslam, you're not supposed, because Arno is, good friends with a couple of Norwegian friends, and they don't like to be reminded that they used to be ruled by other people. Does India use a lot of Russian military equipment? Um, they have over the years. India India is a huge place. Okay, especially when I look at this India versus modern India, because it has Pakistan and Bangladesh is part of it. And historically, this is all India. It just, obviously, they've separated it out between Muslim India and Hindu India, and Muslim India is called Pakistan and Bangladesh. But looking at this, it is a huge place. It is a subcontinent. It is a huge population. And so there's a lot of stuff hanging around. My understanding, they're still using Enfield rifles, you know, maybe because they continued to manufacture them after World War II, but not as frontline division rifles, as sort of, you know, rifles still in some armory somewhere. Again, not, I don't want to like overstate that too much. And sometimes they're like preferred for some of the actions up in Kashmir and the very high altitudes because of a nice bolt action rifle, because they want a bolt action rifle to be able to shoot that stuff. And so they have bought various tanks models and then made stuff with Russian/Soviet over the years. I don't know how much is still hanging around in active inventory versus stored away, because there's a lot of stuff stored away in military warehouses, I'm sure, in India. I can't answer it, and I don't know that how much Singh knows about what's stored away there, but there was a fair amount of that over the years, because it had always, at least during the Cold War, it was Russia and India, Pakistan and China is sort of the where they sort of within the Eurasian continent alignment locally, and India has always wanted to sort of believe that it can chart its own course. And I'm not saying it can't chart its own course, but when you're in a Cold War and it's a binary choice, I know you sort of throw in China as a pseudo other choice, but communism or free world, well, eventually you're forced into a choice to some degree or another. Yeah, you can try to do the middle path or the middle road, but there's only so much of that you can do. Yeah, my social credit score is non-existent. Elizabeth, okay. Spending a few hours in there. Yeah, Russia's our biggest weapons technology. Yes. Yeah, but oh yeah, India. For doing mid-level technology stuff, I think is getting much better at it. It's just sort of the highest end. I don't see that is. Yes, Sing, you can ask me whatever. I may not answer it. Hello, Nate. How you doing? Just getting through the backlog of chats. Pretty good interview with the old Austrian PM where he explains why changing their Australian submarines was a dumb idea. Okay, Nate. Well, I don't know. Okay, I don't know which Australian PM. Some of them are less than bright, including some that I might politically agree with more than their opposition. Diesel electric submarines are not what you want to use for this. Notice where I put the map out. This is in essence the biggest battlefield. I mean, sort of the U.S. battlefield in World War II was this in the Pacific, but Australia doesn't need to worry about things east of Hawaii. This is one of the biggest battlefields, and this is their battlefield. Diesel electrics or air independent systems, either one, are not good for this scale. And trust me, these relatively shallow, I mean, they're deep by what we would consider their standards here, but they're continental shelves, not abyssal depths, out here. Most submarines don't go below what this would be, and that may vary in some of these areas, but even in the Taiwan Straits is pretty deep, even down here. So it's not like the nuclear submarines have a problem operating here and staying down. In this scale, there's two problems. One, even with the air independent system, they got to come up and breathe once in a while. They can run their engines independent of the surface without having to use a snorkel, but they eventually need to get air, so they've got to come up and breathe. Nuclear submarines, and I did watch a documentary recently, within the last year or so, and they were on board. I think it was an American submarine, and they were periodically lighting the oxygen candles, a candle that you would burn and actually give off oxygen. I don't know. I will say straight up, I don't know. But from what I sort of kind of understand, always note my language very carefully. From what I understand, yeah, sometimes you need to burn the candle to reoxygenate the air down there. But I think they were overdoing it for the camera crew. Because my understanding is most of the Virginia types, class submarines, can go down and stay down for their whole cruise. So they leave the dock, whether it's like at Hawaii or, U.S. coast, and they submerge, and they can stay down the whole damn time. And all they ever really do is poke up, or although they ever really sort of need to do, is poke up an antenna once in a while to passively collect information like, oh, are we at war with the Russians? Should I, launch nuclear missiles at somebody? Is get status updates on orders. Like come back to port now, or oh, instead of do your planned mission, go watch, the Korean coast or something. So they may get new orders sent to them, and other than that, they can stay down the whole cruise under the water. You can't do that with a diesel electric or an air independent system. So you have legs, meaning how long you can stay out there without refueling. Diesel electric and the air independent system have a fuel shortage problem. Because, if you understand, the nuclear submarines, because they use heat to do a steam turbine, they can do the splitting of molecules from, get the oxygen off from the hydrogen, turn water into air, into oxygen. So they can stay down there, and they can scrub out the CO2 from us breathing. So they can stay down there a long time and very, very quietly. I know some of the air independent / diesel electric can supposedly technically be a little more quiet because they don't have their main engine running. They're just having their batteries running. But then we still have to look at propeller noise and other things that I don't know. And there's a lot of super secret stuff around that I'm nowhere knowing, other than that the propeller designs are critical. So whether the German submarines or the German submarines that the Indians are going to use are going to have what level of propeller technology versus what the U.S. is putting on their current ones, and or once in a while retrofitting onto older submarines to quiet them down. Yes, because of that nuclear, because they don't have the large battery backup. They have to run the steam turbine, which does make a certain level of noise. I don't even think the Chinese surface ships can, quote unquote, see our submarines once they're down there. I think they're that stealthy. I don't know. So to operate here. Now, if all you're doing is fiddling around fiddling around this region here, defending Australia and, some of their immediate sort of islands. Yeah. Diesel electrics. Yeah, they're all right. Like I say, if you build them right, they can be damn quiet. And while they're down there, until they have to come up and breathe, they can be damn quiet. But eventually they got to come up and breathe. And they can only, they only have so much fuel. The literally my understanding is for the American submarine is for their endurance is how much food they can put on board, because they can manufacture their own clean water. So as long as they want, they can take as much showers and use as much water as they want. They can manufacture as much or enough air to keep them going. Again, my understanding. And the nuclear power engine is good for years and years and years. So it's just how much food they have on their submarines is how long they can operate. And so if you're talking about operating, because it's not just range, that's one thing. It's range and then loitering time. Is there going to be a war starting? Well, let's keep a few subs loitering out here ready to go. Or if it's sitting out waiting, if somebody's like getting ready to invade and you're going to sit out here to sink invasion ships, it's waiting without having to come back and get more fuel, more, like I say, it's food eventually. And now you could, pop up in the, if you have a naval base here in the Philippines, you can pop up and get new food. You don't need all the support systems to support either diesel electrics or support, that's what I believe the Australians had, diesel electrics, not air independent, or nuclear. You just need to have, food. Give them, preserved food, canned food, whatever, MREs. Give them the food and, wave goodbye, and they could disappear within just a few hours, show up and disappear within a few hours. So they're only vulnerable when resupplying. So that, with the idea that if Australia's defense line is up here and not back here, and they want to operate up here, they need nuclear submarines to do it in a modern way. Whatever Nate, we get up to whatever his knowledge of it. And I know there's going to be a lot of infrastructure, nuclear power infrastructure because my understanding again is Australia does not want to be dependent upon America or Britain for the nuclear fuel. So they're going to have some nuclear power plants to make the right type of fuel for their submarines. So there's going to be some handling issues and manufacturing things. But if they want to do that, they got to be able to play on that level, and it's going to cost a lot. Do I think it's right to buy Russian oil? Morally, no. It's because you're helping Russia out. The idea that we're trying to get Russia to change its behavior without invading Russia. Obviously, we're helping Ukrainians fight within Ukraine, and once in a while launch missile strikes outside of it, but mostly fight within Ukraine. So if you're morally trying to, the nations outside of Ukraine are morally trying to get Russia to change its behavior without going to war with it. It's putting pressure on it. So and China isn't going to stop buying Russian oil, so somebody's going to buy it, but you don't need to be part of it. So yeah, it's morally wrong. Basically, they're getting fewer, more expensive subs to support potential offensive action. Well, no, rather than mass defensive submarine fleet. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm still getting through the chat here. Yeah, Nate, okay. Submarine warfare, by its nature, is primarily a defensive warfare. Yeah, you can go sink ships, but you can't effectively. You can, and a lot of the Virginias do have diver lockouts for little commando raids, but little commando raids aren't really offensive war. Not as a overall thing. Submarines, by their nature, are defensive. Surface warships can be defensive or offensive. Like, you can't do a D-Day or even an invasion of Sicily with a bunch of submarines. You can send a commando team, to go on shore on Crete or something, or like raid the Italian coast with it, like the British did a few times in World War II, and send commandos or just submarine crewmen ashore to go blow up a bridge or something. That happened. In World War II, the British did send some ashore and blow up some bridges in Italy, or tunnels or whatever, I forget exactly, but they did that. Submarines are, in essence, defensive. China has a very large navy right now. I just heard a few days ago the big Chinese supercarrier in the dock. There's discussion whether it's ever going to leave that dock because it's still in the dry dock. Because they're sort of thinking that this is what this one sub brief. He's a YouTube channel who's a submariner and has to be very careful. I can tell by the way, and he even talks about it. He has had or still has a security clearance. I think still has. I think on certain technology stuff, he is still getting current information, is still working, but definitely he still knows stuff that's classified from the days that he was actively on the submarine. So he's very careful about what he says. But I guess there's suspicion that the carrier that China has built, some of the steel is not the quality that needs to be, and the ship can't leave port because it's going to fall apart. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. And I'm sure he doesn't know if it's true or not, but that's sort of maybe the thought, that the carrier that they built is just going to have to be scrapped in place, basically. Well, maybe they'll be able to tow it somewhere else. It's not that they maybe can't tow it or move it, but it's not going to be an operational carrier. China's built lots and lots of ships. I right now think most of them, lots of frigates and destroyers. I think they're mostly targets to the American forces, to America, not to the Philippine Navy, not to the Vietnamese Navy, not to the Malaysian Navy or the Singapore Navy, but to the American Navy, and maybe not even to the Taiwanese Navy and coastal defense, but to the American naval air and Navy air and submarine. I think they're just a lot of targets. And they're dangerous targets, maybe, that can launch missiles that might be able to hit you. But I think right now, and it's for multiple reasons, I think they're just a lot of targets. You create a lot of diesel electric submarines, they got to come up and breathe. Well, they might just be a lot of targets. So, and again, where do we defend America? Do we defend it 12 miles offshore? That would be Ron Paul, a former congressman from Texas, the father of the Senator Rand Paul, who's from Kentucky, senator from Kentucky. Ron Paul would like to have very strong U.S. military forces that defend at the 12-mile limit, basically. Get rid of, divisions in Korea, get rid of any sort of, and you may say we shouldn't be in Iraq and Afghanistan, fine, but let's pull the troops in the Air Force base out of Germany. We shouldn't be in NATO. He would get us out of NATO, basically, and just sit back in the U.S. Where should we defend America? Or should we defend America, anything leaving ports that are going to attack us, whether it's coming out of Vladivostok or, coming out of England? Should we defend America, at the Chinese coastline? Or where should we defend America? Should we defend America by defending allies like Korea, Japan, Taiwan? I know this is supposed to be a game-playing session, but I turned it into modern politics, geopolitical stuff. And the Philippines, should we have this as our line of defense? Where should it be Hawaii? Should it be Guam, which is down here? See, I know where Guam is. Should it be here? Where should our line of defense be? Well, he's thinking it should be at the Australian coast. If all of this falls to enemy influence, Australia's fucked. Because to the best of my understanding, currently, Indonesia is trying to be like India in that it's trying to walk a middle path. Indonesia is, where the Philippines is moving towards the U.S. Vietnam is trying to walk an independent path, where like Thailand and Singapore are much more trying to come into the American sphere of protection. But they're trying to walk a independent path. Yeah, get some Chinese influence. Yeah, get some American influence. They probably want to keep most foreign militaries out. Yeah, okay, that's good for Australia, that if that sort of is not a threat, but is not part of that. But if that falls in one way or another, once it does, Australia is big, but it doesn't have a population. It's a big empty place. What the hell? It has like 3 large cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. Am I correct? Because I know Canberra, I don't think it's a large city. I mean, it's a city, yeah. Adelaide, I don't think it's a large city. It's just really large as Sydney and Melbourne, and then you sort of maybe have Perth out here. It's doomed if this, because this is a huge population. This here that I'm showing you here, just right about that, that is literally half the world's population or more, or more. Most of India, Japan, China, Indonesia, all the Philippines. This is half the world's population or more right there. If that all comes crushing down on this, I don't care how many diesel electric submarines you have, you're doomed. Because America, way over here, that's a little too far to protect you if this is, happens. So he's wrong from a geopolitical standpoint. And yes, I know I'm an American sitting safely far away. Yeah, Norwegians are okay. I remember. Okay, pretty sure that, yeah, BMPs. Do you have interest in World War I as well? Elizabeth, my interest is the history of mankind. I would actually love to talk a lot about the 18th century. If I could play some games and have lots of people watch me play games in the 18th century, various wars in Europe and whatnot, sign me up. I mean, I love talking about World War II. It probably is my favorite topic, but my second favorite topic is the 18th century. But yeah, World War I, and we just recently with Toy Jet and a few others here got done with playing a multiplayer World War I game. The point I'm just trying to catch up to all the chat. Sorry, guys. Point that he made is that Australia should have its own fleet to defend Malaysia, Indonesia, archipelago. Yeah, but it ain't going to happen. It just, Australia does not have the money to do too big of a thing. I don't know. Why did America send so many National Guard divisions into World War II? Well, they were the divisions we had. Now, by the time they were sent overseas, they were equipped like any other division. It just, they started out as National Guard. In 1938, they would be lucky to have full equipment that is National Guard units I'm talking about in 38. They would be lucky to have full equipment that's World War I surplus, if you will, made for World War I. Uniforms just right around 38, 39, I think it's more 39, convert from what you would think of as a World War I uniform to a World War II uniform. Not just the helmet, because the Doughboy helmet or the Brodie helmet of Britain or the Tommy helmet, however you want to say, that was a close version of it. I mean, we made our own, but a close version of that is what America had equipped with, and was still equipped with that for the Army and Navy and other forces in Hawaii. The division sent to the Philippines, in the Marines that were out in places like Wake Island. So the Marines were still equipped in that in the end of 1941, when the Japanese attacked. We don't get to really start seeing large numbers of what we think of, the American sort of two-part helmet that we're used to for World War II until 42 and the invasion of North Africa. And even then, still, there's lots of those older helmets being used in various garrisons and places for a long time, if not to the end of the war, just because, they just had them and no one gave them new stuff. So the National Guard units are stood up and trained up in 1941 and 42. 1940 and 41, getting trained up in some national exercises, getting equipped a little bit better. By the time they're going to go overseas, they've got M1 Garands instead of Springfield rifles. They've got full complements of trucks and half-tracks and light tanks and, if they're an proper armored division, proper tanks, the Shermans and whatnot. By the time they're going overseas, they are still that same division, but they are now functionally a line division. Are submarines used to sink supply ships still? Absolutely, Pickle. Commerce raiding is still very much a thing. German sub warfare was offensive, used subs, I would say. Nope. I wouldn't call that. Commerce raiding is not offensive. It's not sitting behind the castle walls. But commerce raiding is denial of the sea, okay? Offensive, because see, we're talking because again, Beamslam, you're a land warfare person. Hello, Kyle. How you doing? Just getting to your thing. I heard the major issues, yeah, with the supercarrier. Yeah, they're having. My understanding, again, I'm not an expert on modern Navy at all. I mean, I'm just sort of try to keep informed, and I'm just hearing bits and pieces myself. Naval warfare is different than land warfare. Britain parking its fleet here, literally here, during the 18th century when it goes to war with France. That's a defensive maneuver, okay? Yeah, they're sitting outside of Brest, the port here, but that's where the French fleet is. That's defensive, because what they're doing is keeping that French fleet bottled up so that it doesn't either invade Britain, cover an invasion force, or send out a force to go invade some British sugar islands or something like this. That may look offensive in that they're sailing around just, in sight, maybe being shot at once in a while by forts of Brest that are here. That is a defensive operation. That is not offensive. Offensive is not deny, because that's a denial of the use of sea to the enemy. That isn't using the sea for your own benefit. That is the denial of operations of the sea. Naval warfare, as I was taught in my Navy training, there's two factors. There's one, and it's coming out for Thayer Mahan, is deny the enemy the use of the sea. That's phase one. Phase two is assure your ability to use the sea, okay? So commerce raiding is denying the enemy the use of the sea. That is defensive. Offensive is carrying the war to the enemy on land, okay? Is using the sea